Welcome back to Design for Manufacturing. Today we're going to be covering Lesson 3, and in this lesson we're going to look at creating a lofted extrude or a lofted boss base. Let's start by creating a part. We go to File, New, click on Part, and then click on OK. We want this part to use the units of millimeters, so we're going to double check our units down here at the bottom. I'm already in millimeter grams second, but if you're not, go ahead and select that. And then for this part, the first thing we want is we want a series of reference geometries that we're going to use to place the sketches that we'll then use to create the lofted boss base. The lofted boss base uses a series of cross-sectional profiles to create a smooth contoured surface. So today we're actually going to be making a humeral head from the scans of an actual bone. Alright, let's start off by creating some reference geometry. So go up and click on reference geometry and then click on plane. And then I'm going to make these relative to the top plane. So for my first reference, I'm going to click on the top plane. I actually want to have 6 of these planes, and I want them to go below the top plane. So I'm going to click on the flip option. And I'm going to make sure the spacing between each of these is 10 millimeters. Once I have both of those entered in correctly, I'll double check in the window to make sure it looks okay. And then I'll click on the green check mark. Now that I have my 6 planes, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start from the bottom plane. I'm going to work my way up, and I'm going to create a sketch object, which is a scan, the actual picture, to sketch on top of. So let's start on plane 6, create a sketch. So I'm clicking on plane 6 and then clicking on the sketch icon. And then I'm going to go into Tools, come all the way down to Sketch Tools, and then come over and again all the way down to Sketch Picture. Depending on your resolution, you may have to click on the caret on the bottom of this list to get more options. But click on Sketch Picture, and then you need to navigate to wherever you downloaded the files from this lesson, and we're going to start with the Humeral scan 006. So this is the first sketch on plane 6, and this is scan 006. I've already scaled each of these pictures so that way 1 pixel is 1 millimeter. So these are 180 pixels by 180 pixels, so they're already the right aspect ratio. If you're using your own pictures, you may have to resize some of these pictures, but for all these in this lesson, we'll just accept the original orientation. So go ahead and click accept for that. I'm going to hit F to scale out so I can see a little bit better. Then I'm going to use the selected zoom to zoom in on this new cross section. Now for each of these, I'm actually going to use the spline tool. And I'm going to make sure I start at the same spot and end in the same spot for each of these sketches. I also want to try and use about the same number of points on each of these because that's going to prevent the loft extrude from creating twist in the design after I go to extrude it. So I'm going to start here. I'm just going to kind of go around. I'm going to use quite a few points just so I have these points to reference on the next set that I do. And it's good to kind of have a few of them that are pretty evenly spaced. So there I've got some pretty evenly spaced points. I've got quite a few points. If I want to move any of these around, I can. I'm going to actually exit the spline tool by hitting escape. And then if I want to move one of these, all I do is click on the point, and then if I hold it, I can drag it around. Oop, that's actually the arrow. So I can change the angle of that. And if I get the point of it, I may have to zoom in a little bit. If I get the point, I can hold that, and I can actually drag that around as well. So hopefully you can see that. So you can use that for any of the points to make sure that they line up appropriately. This looks pretty good relative to my profile. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept this sketch. So I'm going to click on the exit sketch. And then I'm just going to go up to my next plane, plane 5, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start by creating a sketch. I'm going to go into Tools, Sketch Tools, Sketch Picture. I'm going to select the picture 005 and click on Open. Again, I'm going to select the default position of this picture, so I don't want to move it around at all. And then I'm going to use the spline tool. Again, I want to start at the same spot. So notice that this, if you look at these closely, the first spot has a round dot, and the rest of them have kind of that asterisk-looking dot that denotes a point reference. So I'm going to start at the same spot, just coming over horizontally. And then for every point that I have on my previous sketch, I'm just going to try to place another point close to that on this profile. Again, if you get the constraint there that they're coincident, you can either take that or you can delete it afterwards if you don't want to keep it. If you find yourself needing an extra point or two, you can go ahead and add that, but the fewer deviations you have from the original number of points, the better off you'll be for this. And again, don't forget that you can go ahead and add the tangency options and the different changes to the points after they're made to capture some more of that geometry if you need to. So let's take a look at that. Again, here it looks like I'm pretty good. That one looks like I got a little too high on that point. So again, I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the sketch, the spline tool, come up to this point. I'm just going to drag this down a little bit. Sometimes it takes a second for this to respond, so don't get impatient. Just kind of wait for it to start moving with you. And then if I want to, I can delete this coincident constraint, and then I can move that a little more finely by zooming in and changing that. But that looks pretty good, so I'll go ahead and accept that sketch. Go up to plane 4. Again, I'm going to create a sketch on plane 4. Go into Tools. Go into Sketch Tools. Sketch Picture. And now I'm going to select the Humeral scan 004. So I've already done 6 and 5, and now I'm on 4. And again, I'm on plane 4, so that's good. Again, another cross section here. Come back into, accept the sketch picture, and then go into spline. Again, I want to make sure I'm starting on the same point, so still kind of on the left side in line with these other 2 points. I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to come around and add a point for each one of the points I have previously on that sketch. And again, I'm just trying to project those previous points from those last 2 sketches onto this new profile. And again, if I need to, I'm going to use some of those tangent controls to make sure I have the appropriate geometry with this afterwards. So that looks pretty good. Here, I'd like to kind of have this come out a little bit more quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on that. Again, exit the spline tool, and I'm just going to grab this leader. I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. And then since this is making this come in a little bit too quickly, what I can do is I can actually shorten this end of this a little bit. And see it comes a little bit sharper of a curve. And if I want to, I can also pull this out. And that looks like that fits this scan just a little bit better. And then the rest of this looks pretty good. Maybe here I could pull this point up a little bit more to get that to line up a little bit better. And again, if I wanted to, I could kind of pull this guy out to get that to line up a little bit better. And again, you can modify these as much or as little as you want for this exercise. It depends on how tightly constrained you want this to be. That looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to accept that. And now I'm going to go, just again, same thing. Click on plane 3, click on Sketch, we'll go to Tools, Sketch Tools, Sketch Picture, click on the third image, click on Open, and then again, I'm going to accept that default position there. I need to zoom out a little bit so I can see this whole thing. And again, the same process. So go to the spline tool, start in the same spot as you did the previous 3, just project it onto the new cross section, and then make your way around the sketch. So I'm just going around, clicking all these points and kind of as close as I can get to an appropriate location. Again, this is not super sensitive. If you go up or down a little bit, it's not going to make a big difference. But again, having the right number of points does help this process. And then here, you notice I have some geometry there that I want to capture, so I'm just going to add an extra point there. And again, as long as you're careful about not adding a lot more than you need, that should be fine when you go and do the lofted extrude. So I have a few places here where I'm not quite where I want to be, so I'm just going to pull these out to make this curve a little bit tighter. And again, same thing over here. Just going to pull this out, get some of that geometry captured. That looks a little bit better. And then look around here. Those look good. Looks good. Here, kind of the same thing. I'm just going to try and pull this out a little bit to get some of this geometry a little bit better. Again, this is all just manual adjustments to try and make it as close as I can get. So it looks pretty good. Again, we'll go on to the next thing. So plane 2, click on Sketch, go to Tools, Sketch Tools, Sketch Picture, go to Humeral scan 002, click Open, and then I'm going to accept that sketch picture. And again, this one is pretty well overlaid with the next one, so I may have to take some of those coincident constraints. So I'm actually going to start this in the same spot, go up a little bit. I'll take that one. This one I actually want to move maybe in just a little bit. And then this one, I can probably take that same spot. That looks okay. But this next spot needs to come in quite a bit. And this next part, again, is coming out quite a bit from the previous one. So a little bit rounder out here. That one, looks like I'd rather have it be just a little bit outside of that line. Again, these are kind of pretty loosely defined, so just trying to get them as close as you can to where they were before. Again, I'm skipping some of those extra ones I had before because I don't really have that geometry right there. So I'll take a look at this, do some modifications. It looks like I may have missed a point here. So I want to show you how we can fix that up as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit this spline tool. And then I'm going to zoom in on this. And you'll see I have a point here, and a point here. Where on the previous sketch I have a point right here. So let's move this one down here just a little bit. You'll notice there, and I've got these points lined up a little bit better. And if I want to, I can move this guy as well. And I can also delete this constraint if I want to pull that off. And then I can move it a little bit closer. And again, that snap is a function of the visual distance, not the actual distance between the parts. So as you zoom in, that snap will get less sensitive. That looks okay to me. I'm going to move this guy out a little bit more too. Again, trying to look in line with these previous ones as well as this last one that I did. I think I'll take the constraint off that as well, just so I can pull them out a little bit more. That looks a little bit better to me. Again, if you miss one of these points, you can add a point as well just by coming in and say insert spline point, and then you can just draw these points in wherever you want them and then modify them if you need to. Again, we don't really need to do that on here, so I'm actually going to undo those last 2 points. And that's looking pretty good to me. Let's look at the rest of the drawing here. This looks a little too tight. I want to actually pull this out a little bit. So I'm going to click on this point, and I'm just going to drag this out and up a little bit to pull that out. That looks a little better. I can pull this guy out a little bit and maybe turn him. That looks a little bit better. So that looks pretty good. This is coming outside the sketch a little bit, so I'm just going to pull this a little bit down the line here. Maybe take off the coincident constraint. Make it a little bit easier for me. I'm just going to pull them a little bit off. Again, that's going to add a little bit of twist to this, but it'll probably be okay. So let's accept that. It looks pretty good. Ooh, actually, looks right here. This got way off. Let's make sure we're still on the right sketch. Sketch 4. Let's actually edit this because I want to look at that real quick. Okay, so no, we're okay. So this is still sketch 5. So that's the previous one just overlaying. And then it's just the color there that's hiding that a little bit. So there we go. Yeah, so we're still good. All right, so that was 2. We have the last one, so go into 1. Again, create a sketch. Go into Tools, Sketch Picture. I'm going to go to Humeral 1. Open that. And we've got a much smaller kind of closed loop here. So it should be a pretty easy spline to do. Again, try to make sure we have the same number of points still though. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, I don't really have to count. I'm just trying to see how many I have. So I have about 16 points there. If you have more or less, try not to worry about it. It should be fine either way, as long as they're kind of in line with your previous ones. Again, this is a freehand operation, so it's not real sensitive. So I'm going to move these around, try and get them lined up a little bit better. Maybe pull that guy out a little bit there. Move this one down a little bit. I might take that one there. Pull this one out. This needs to be a little bit out further. This one needs to be a little bit out further as well. And then the rest of this is looking pretty good. These ones may be a little bit too far out, so I'll maybe pull them in a little bit. You can delete these points as well if you feel like you've got too many and you want to simplify it a little bit. So that's pretty good. I'll go ahead and take that. So now I've got these 6 profiles. What I actually want to do is I want to use these to make a solid object. You can see already that these sketches are starting to form kind of an egg shape or a bump shape, and that's really the shape of the top of the humerus. So let's go into features and then click on lofted base or lofted boss base. And then for the profiles, I just want to select all my sketches, and I need to select them in order. So I'm going to start from 1, and then I'm going to go to 2, 3. Oh, make sure we get 2. So if you get these out of order, you need to make sure you come back in here and you change the order. So I'm starting from the bottom and working the way up. You can start from the top and work the way down. Either way, it's not going to matter, but make sure you get them in order on here. So on here, just make sure you start either 1 to 6 or 6 to 1. Either way should work fine. And then what you want to do is you want to check these line right here. And if all of your starting points lined up, that line should look nice and along one side of the object. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and accept that. And we can look around for it to see if anything looks strange. So you get a little bit of a twist there, right? So that twist is actually caused by an interpolation it's doing between the 2 planes. And you can see that's the plane where I added the extra bump, right? Let's go in and take a look at that in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to edit this feature. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn the sketch view off. So I'm just going to turn off sketches and see if I can look at that without the loft showing up. So there we go. So here you see this curve, and that's what's creating that curve right there, is that it's interpolating along these points. And so I created this extra point here. What it's doing is just coming inside. If I want to, I can actually move this guy around, and I can try and see if I move this to this geometry, maybe I can get this to kind of force it to be linear along this axis. And again, it may just move that curve to the other side, but we'll see how that looks. That might look a little bit better for us. So again, we still have this curve there. Now it's just moved it to this other side. But if there's less geometry there, then it might make less difference to our total feature. So let's accept that. Take a look at that. So that looks a little bit better. If we want to, we can actually add more guidelines to this to constrain this a little bit more. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I just want you to see how to use this feature. And then when you're doing, if you're doing something for your design, just be a little bit more careful about where you place the points, or add or remove points on there to get that to work out. All right. The last thing I want to do is I actually want to add a point to the top of this that I can use to finish off the dome shape of the top of the humeral head. So I'm going to create another reference geometry plane. I'm just going to offset this. I can either do it from the top of plane 1 or from the top plane. I think I'll go ahead and use the plane 1 for this one. And I don't want to go very far. So I'm just going to say this is 5 millimeters, so half the distance between plane 1 and the top plane. I'll accept that, and I'm going to create a sketch on this plane, but all I'm going to create on this sketch is just a point. So create a sketch, make sure you're normal to the plane, and then I'm going to create a point. So come here to the point tool. I'm just going to place this as close as I can visually get it to the center of this circle. Again, I'm not being real particular about this. I just want it close to the center. And then I'm going to exit the sketch. Now I want to add this point to my loft extrude, but to do that, the loft needs to come after this sketch. So I either move the loft down like that, or move the sketch up. To do that, all I do is I click and hold the little icon next to the loft and then just drag it down. As long as there's no conflicts, it'll let you do that. Now I can go in and edit this feature, and I can add the sketch 7 to my list here. Now again, here sketch 7 is at the top, so since I went from the bottom to the top, it just adds fine. If you sketch from the top to the bottom, you just need to move sketch 7 to the top of this list. So that gives me this dome top, but you notice it's coming to a point rather than being a nice dome. So what I need to do is I need to change the constraints. Since this is at the end of my profile, so I'm going to change the end constraint to normal to profile. And that's going to do is going to change that from being a sharp point into a perfectly flat, rounded point, which is what I want. So now I can accept that. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to just visually adjust this height so that way it's nice and round, because I don't really know how high this is supposed to go because I don't have sketches for the top of the actual humerus. So I'm going to come down a little bit. That looks pretty good to me. Just get it to some point where it looks visually good to you. and accept that. And that's the end for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me via email or through Canvas. Thanks for watching. Bye.